Hey guys, and welcome back to History Revision Success, and I've got another A-level revision video for you today. So we're doing the last video kind of on our context, our legacy, our revision of the foreign powers at the start of Elizabeth's reign. The whole purpose of these videos is to really understand what position she is in by the point of ascending to the throne, what the world stage looks like. Once you know that, it's much easier moving forwards and thinking about what she does in her reign with these foreign powers. So this is the last time, I promise, but I'm going to quickly run through my Instagram again and just kind of plug out there for anyone who hasn't already realized or seen that I've got this going. It's a platform for little chunks of information, revision techniques, essay plans, arguments, things which I think will be really helpful, but that I can't really give you from the YouTube platform. I'm so happy we've reached 1,000 subscribers, which is really great. And I'm very grateful for all of you who have followed me on this kind of journey that I've taken, trying to provide you with these lessons and revision videos. And the Instagram is kind of the next step really in providing that platform to help you. So yeah, loads and loads of different things are going on there. Every day of the week is going to have a different theme. So on a Monday, we're having these essay-based questions. What's the answer? What's the argument? What would I include? What are the factors that need to be in there? Then we've got a revision day, revision tip. We've got a grade 9 for GCSE or an A-star for A-level day. And then every Friday, I'm going to be giving you some sections or some little snippets of some essay plans, some conclusions, something practical, tangible you can actually go and use. So I really hope you go and have a look at that. It's at History Revision Success, exactly the same as this channel, and I'll put it in the description box below. So going back to Elizabeth, in this video, we're going to look at Ireland and France, both topics which are not really covered that much in some of the AQA revision guides. The Access to History, the later Tudors, is the best revision guide I've used. So if you can access that, I would highly recommend having a look. That includes lots of information on all of these countries and provides you with the most holistic approach that I believe. So just to recap, her aims: peaceful, she wants to avoid war, she wants to be like her grandfather Henry. Now, the reason for that partly is because she's a woman, she's a Protestant in a very Catholic Europe, and she is unmarried, so therefore she is very vulnerable. Now we're going to start with Ireland. So contextually, what has happened in Ireland? Well, colonization in Ireland by England began under Henry VIII. He formally declared himself as King of Ireland in 1541, and this essentially made formal claim of England's claim on Ireland. Now, from that point, they kind of start going into a series of short-term fixes rather than long-term investment in Ireland. You know, how are we going to take control of this country and manage it in the way we want without really investing time, effort, and money into doing so? It was very difficult to do so, partly because the English was so unpopular by the in Ireland, as expected. They were colonizing invaders. Some of the tactics that were used. So military service was very unpopular, and therefore they began this kind of tactic that if you go and fight in the army in Ireland, we will give you some land. Now, obviously, where's the land been taken from? It's been taken from native Irish lords who lived there. So that also led to lots of animosity. They also started using that land and cultivating it into plantations. So that meant that immigrant settlers went out to work and manage these plantations, and native communities were often displaced by this. Under Cromwell, we saw a system of surrender and re-grant, which was absolutely hated by the local Irish people. It was basically the idea that you're going to surrender all your land to me, and then I'm going to re-grant it back to you by royal charter. And obviously, you're only going to receive that royal charter if you're loyal and if you listen and do as we say. That's essentially saying land you've held in your family for generations, we're going to take it from you, and then maybe we'll give it back if you adhere to our social contract. So again, not winning England any kind of popularity points from the local people. There was also lots of evidence of kind of chronic violence by English settlers to the local Irish people. First of all, there were lots of aggressive acts by the administration. So we had cases of kind of soldiers disregarding the law, killing lords and chiefs, seizing native owners, native land, setting up garrisons, illegal land seizure. And essentially on top of that, it's the idea that just Gaelic Irish society was fundamentally incompatible with English law and central government. They run under completely different systems. One example being the fact that England runs off the system of primogeniture, the idea that your eldest son will inherit. So whether that's the crown of England or just your estate, your eldest son was due to inherit. Now, in comparison, the Irish system was that a chief of a clan was elected from a small group of kind of noble lineage, people with noble lineage. So very different. And obviously the Tudors tried to impart and impose their system on the local people, imposing their culture on the Irish people. Now, this often led to kind of violent disputes because the Irish laws didn't accept this was the way that land was supposed to be passed. Overall, essentially, we see kind of this process of Anglicisation, which hoped to English or Anglify the Irish lords kind of through education, court appointments, but it just didn't see much success. The Irish had no interest in kind of, English culture as such or running Ireland under these systems. They were very happy with how they were doing it and how their traditions had told them to do it for generations. Now, moving on to Mary. So Mary imparted martial law in Ireland. This essentially meant you could be executed without trial by jury, so extremely brutal, which antagonized the native chieftains even further. Now, by the point of Elizabeth coming to power, you can understand why there was so much kind of historic animosity from the Irish towards the English. Irish remained largely Catholic in the most part, and that meant that Elizabeth became extremely threatened after the papal bull. She has a very Catholic, very hostile, very antagonized and resentful country right on her doorstep, who is also of an alternate faith when their faith leader has told all people of their faith to get rid of her. So she's in a very vulnerable position. Ireland could have been a very useful stepping stone into England, and therefore it has the potential to be a serious threat. So that is Ireland. Now I'm going to move on to look at France. Now, Elizabeth enters her reign with kind of the legacy of the war that her sister had entered. And so the very first thing she does is in 1559 is sign the Treaty of Cateau-Cambrésis, which kind of formalizes what happens with Calais. So it gives France possession of Calais for the next 8 years, and at which point they're supposed to give it back to England. And if they don't, they have to pay England £125,000. Now, France gets a little bit complicated because at the same time as Elizabeth is in power, they are having their own kind of internal civil war. And this all surrounds on kind of factions and religion. The reason for this is that Henry II dies and his son Francis II inherits the throne. However, within 18 months, Francis also passes away, which means Charles IX becomes king. Now, he's only 10 years old, so he is unable to rule France successfully and effectively because of his age. Therefore, his mother, Catherine de Medici, takes control as his regent. Now, what this leads to is a factional power struggle between the Guise faction in France, which was predominantly Catholic, related to Mary of Guise, who is Mary Queen of Scots' mother, versus the Medici family in France, who are currently in power, in control. However, they are led by a 10-year-old king. Now, Medici is obviously not secure. Charles is 10 years old. We're being ruled by a female regent. It's not secure at all. So in order to try and increase their power, their stability, Catherine de' Medici adopts a more conciliatory policy towards the Huguenots, who are Protestants in France. She does this to try and avoid conflict. She doesn't want to enter into religious war because her son is not completely secure on the throne. However, this angers the Guise faction, who, as I said, were very Catholic and are very unhappy with this kind of approach. And therefore, this leads to and sparks the French Wars of Religion, which was a civil war. And, you know, things happen like the Duke of Guise massacres Huguenots in 1562, and essentially creates a situation where France is very unstable in its own right. Now, France becomes relevant to foreign policy, namely from the Treaty of Joinville, and I will explain what that is in my video on Elizabeth's foreign policy, but there's a little hint for you about why I think it's important to know about France, even though some of the textbooks don't mention France at all. So I think France is interesting and important and can give you that really good kind of A-star knowledge and little bits to throw in there about the role of France when united with Spain under the Treaty of Joinville. But if you want that explained properly, subscribe to the channel and you'll be alerted when I do that video. So thank you very much for watching. Hopefully this was helpful. Next video in this series will be on the Anglo-Spanish relationship and a little bit of context and legacy of that one for revision. And then we'll look at what actually happens between the English and the Spanish in foreign policy and why that relationship breaks apart, and go into the Armada, the war in the Netherlands, etc. Other topics which I think the textbooks do not give very good information on, to be honest. So stay tuned and hopefully I can help you out.